All the action will be at St. Mary's, where Chelsea usually travel to and come home with 3 points. It's quite an impressive record, actually. Just 1 loss, 2 draws and 10 wins in 13 games played in all competitions in the ground that opened in 2001. And I've marked stats alongside me as well for this preview. Now, Chelsea have really revived their season so far, marked stats. I mean, they are scoring goals, they're winning games, and they look absolutely rejuvenated under Thomas Tuchel, don't they?
5 wins in his first 6 games, 8 goals scored, barely 1 conceded, and they're still undefeated at this point. And what's even more impressive is players like, Timo Werner, Callum Hudson-Odoi, even Marcos Alonso have all looked really, really good. Thomas Tuchel is clearly steering the team in the right direction. But 2 players that have stood out for me on a personal level is Mateo Kovacic and Jorginho. Let's take a look at the combined heat map for both individuals in Chelsea's last 2 games against Newcastle and Sheffield United. And it's pretty clear at this point just how much ground and space that they cover on the pitch. And it's reflected when you actually watch them on the field as well, because it almost feels like they're everywhere, at every single corner, at every single point in time. And that's just how efficient they've been in terms of being influential in the middle of the park. But to better understand the sort of impact that both players have had from a statistical point of view, let's take the Newcastle game as an example. Remember that these 2 players were previously written off by fans prior to Thomas Tuchel's arrival. But under Tuchel, they've been exceptional. And even in the game against Newcastle, both men had incredible numbers from a defensive standpoint as the anchors of the team. Both of them touched the ball and passed the ball more than any other player on the pitch, and they also engaged in battles and duels all across the park. Jorginho won 9 duels and made 4 tackles. Kovacic won 10 duels and made 3 tackles. But when you dive a little bit deeper, you realize it's not just all defensive, it's not just all about stability when it comes to these both men. Because under Tuchel, the significant improvement can also be seen from an offensive point of view, from an attacking point of view. Let's start by taking a look at Jorginho, and you can see that his numbers under Thomas Tuchel from an offensive standpoint across various different metrics have had incredible improvements in the last 5 games alone. For example, he's passing more into the final third under Thomas Tuchel than he ever did. He's making more progressive passes under Thomas Tuchel than he ever did. And what's even more impressive is that he's involved in a lot more shot creating actions. For a player that's deemed too negative, he's so much more involved in creating chances for Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel than he was under Frank Lampard. The same can be said about Kovacic as well. He's dribbling a lot more under Thomas Tuchel. He's carrying the ball progressively a lot more under Tuchel, like he did, especially against Newcastle last Monday. But the standout part about Kovacic is the incredible amount of passes into final third that he's making under Tuchel, which essentially means, or indicates rather, that he's dropping deeper to be able to make those sort of passes into dangerous areas in the final third. My question to the pundits is, what exactly is Thomas Tuchel doing from a tactical standpoint to be able to reap so much out of 2 individuals that were previously written off by the fan base?
These are some very, very interesting points there, Mark Stats. I mean, today N'Golo Kante does come in for Jorginho, so it'll be interesting to see how that midfield partnership will work as well. But before we focus on how those midfielders work under Thomas Tuchel, let's look back, though, Mario, at how things were, how Chelsea were under Frank Lampard, and explain to us, looking back, what's the difference here?
Yeah, when you look at a Chelsea side, when it was under Frank, I think there was a lot of freedom going on. And I think when you have a lot of freedom as players, it's a good thing, because then you can expose yourself really well and you can see the way they attack. But there are moments that are very key for me, is that how you attack. And sometimes you saw in the clip, you saw Werner almost walking back, and then he decided to attack. And I think Tuchel has changed certain things with Frank. I felt like sometimes left open. And sometimes it can work out really well, because I don't want to say everything was not a good decision, because they still managed to score goals, they still managed to do certain things, and that worked out well. But when you look at a Tuchel side, slightly different. He's more like a manager that tells you how he wants it to be, and then you add your creativity to it. And I think, like, especially coming from I come out of a system, like as a young kid, I came from Ajax. And so the system, I was more used to playing a certain system. Look how many players are attacking for Tuchel's side. That's why he's playing a bank of four in the middle of the park. So all four can involve with the game. But he wants his players to face towards the opponent's goal, because as quick as he can get them to do that, as quick as he can look into attacking the certain sides. And if you see at this angle, when you're watching that, you can see clearly what he's trying to achieve here. The ball goes wide, comes inside, and that is exactly where he's going after, to making sure, how can I make a transition as quickly as possible? Because he plays just like they both play, because Southampton plays like that, the high pressing game, and as quick as they can get and surprise opponents. And Frank tried to do it, but sometimes his players were either not fit or didn't understand exactly what had to be done. And then this time, I think Tuchel has really worked hard on that, and moments like this happen. And look, we talked about Alonso, and he's seeing, like he's spreading already now. He's making the pitch big by making people go outside. But the two people in the middle of the park, like Kovacic and Jorginho, that is very crucial. Why is that crucial? Because now it's very difficult to pick up a midfielder, because if one goes short, the other one goes slightly deeper. And then they keep on mixing in around. So it's kind of tricky for you, because back in the days when you looked at Chelsea, Jorginho was the only one, especially in the time of Zari. So I know I'm going back, but in that time, he was really alone, and some players will play against Chelsea and just mark him, and then the game was over. And now Tuchel doesn't do that. He changed it. He put two people to make it a real big problem for any opponents to lock them up.
Well, today the change, as I've mentioned, is of course N'Golo Kante coming in for Jorginho. Then, Mario, do you see him playing in a similar way, a like-for-like role as Jorginho tonight?
Exactly, because I don't expect him to do anything different, because that's why I said, like, when you see that Kovacic and Jorginho have that couple, then the Kante comes in, it's not going to be any different. I always been a big fan of Kante. Why? Because believe it's very, very difficult, a player that is so good in defensive wise. So when they break down, especially away from home, because you're playing away from home against a team that, regardless of what their previous scores was, you still have to manage to make sure that in the middle of the park, you are the boss, because that's where Chelsea's really focused on, to really control the game from the middle of the park and have no surprises.